Hello everyone, Philopanic here with GameSlayer to cast this quarterfinals match in the 1v1 Winter Cup between Blues and Cubit. Blues did win 6 games in the group stage to Cubit's 4, putting him as the higher seed and probably, to be honest, a slight favorite to win this matchup, but Cubit is no slouch either, so anything could happen.
Yes, however, in the group stage, the only people Cubit actually beat to get into this was me and Yerand, who both of us had absolutely awful scores compared to the rest of the people in the group, so Blues definitely favored.
Yeah, Blues did pick series for the first match, and both of our players are in the lobby, so they're both ready, so we're going to get right ahead and get started.
Let's see if... Let's see if those old synapses are happening. Let's see if Cubit can take out Blues. Back in his prime, he easily could have. Let's see if he can again.
Here we are, game number 1 between Blues and Cubit in this best of 3 matchup. Blues enters into this quarterfinals as the higher seed and probably the favorite to win, as I mentioned earlier, but Cubit no slouch. I'm Philopanic. GameSlayer's also with me. GameSlayer, what do you think about this map?
Well, there's definitely a science spot in the right-hand side. There's blue and reds. There's water and iron right there, but the aluminium is sort of stuck in the middle of the map. Of course, that means there's Nomad is always viable. There's silicon and aluminium highs both right next to each other.
Not to mention the low electronics price there.
Yeah, especially with that. There's some uranium going. Okay, Cubit's taking it.
Yeah, Cubit did take the kind of obvious Nomad founder, then Blues is going to go for the Scientist. Scientist versus Nomad does seem like a good matchup. Blues actually doesn't have to ship that far. It's a little bit far to ship that aluminum, but it's not terribly far. The
way he found it as well, he tried to maximize the amount of water tiles he's got. They're not all perfect adjacency, but he does have 5 tiles there to make use out of. I think it was kind of a misfound from Cubit, honestly. Unless he particularly wanted to go against the Scientist. The whole reason for him founding the second HQ was purely as a blockage. If he'd have founded it closer to that spot with the Scientist, he could potentially lock Blues out of a lot of options.
Yeah, I mean, kind of, yes. This first found did get all the upgrade resources and all the water that he probably needs as a Nomad. So the second one, he's going for the other resources that he can't get. So he has access to everything here except for carbon. So he's got the uranium to go into power if and when power becomes an issue.
I mean, if he was doing that, he'd take a uranium aluminium or uranium iron mine, surely, rather than this high metal mine. Does Cubit think he's a robot?
I'm not sure why Cubit's going into
Does Blues think he's a robot?
Cubit going into steel, I guess just trying to sell down the upgrade resources.
That is one of the big problems, actually, with this map. That there's very little that's good profit-wise, and the steel mills would have gone into Blues' economy. Quite a bit to try and get that glass, but at the same time, though, those are going to be 3 fairly worthless tiles later on, but I guess being a Nomad, he can always recover that high iron mine.
Yeah, the one thing that's going on right now is Blues does have a large stockpile of water, been buying up into that quite a lot, also mining a lot of water out here too. And
makes sense. Blues does have a huge resource advantage over Cubit, but of course Cubit only costs 10k to upgrade, whereas Blues is 22. However, Blues has a lot of electronics as well, and if Blues actually sold down those electronics, he would be very close to his upgrade.
Yeah, Blues only needs 20k for the upgrade, has 26, so already has plenty for that upgrade, just needs to sell some out. Cubit, on the other hand, needs another 1k for the upgrade, so Blues just holding on a little bit longer, perhaps. There we go, for the upgrade.
Yeah, I don't think he realizes that Cubit had already bought the 40 electronics he needed before I think he even pressed the upgrade button.
Yeah, Blues completely crashed the price of water down to next to nothing. There is that double tile comes out for auction. The game agrees with you, GameSlayer. It's too good not to be claimed, and Blues does get it. Cubit upgrading to HQ3.
Ouch.
I mean, it is series, all the tiles are more valuable. The Blues realizing his mistake that he's not really preventing Cubit from upgrades to HQ3 as well. Immediately moves into some farms.
And some carbon, okay. I guess chems are pretty high up on the prices right now, but that's about to change as there's a fuel shortage.
There's a shortage on, let's see, fire in the storage tanks there, so oxygen, carbon, and fuel. Cubit moving into some electronics factories that are barely making any money.
Yeah, unfortunately, this carbon, along with Blues' buy-in, has been is going to hurt him quite a bit there. But he does still have some carbon bought up. That carbon was bought up when it was around 30, so these are making theoretically a bit more money, but not by much. Blues going into a single nuclear plant. Going into 2 nuclear plants at this point. He's actually taking out some of his steel for this. I mean, it makes sense. The price of power is quite high, but he's going to need a lot of steel later on. These cost a lot of steel to put down.
Yeah, I'm thinking that, so Blues is going to try and just take the edge off of his debt before it becomes a bit of an issue later. And no time better to do that when the power is 150, and then if Blues gets into that market and kills it before Cubit has a chance to. Well, Cubit's actually only 10k debt ahead of Blues at this point, so neither are very close to earning positive power money. But that price of steel still relatively cheap. What? 53.
What was that, Blues? Okay, so Blues bought a spy to reveal the Goose Squad on the electrolysis reactor, and then went ahead and chose to freeze anyway.
I mean, that's the only thing that Cubit has that's making money right now.
Sure,
so
but
knocking
it's
out half of
only
it.
one tile.
It's better than nothing, I suppose.
But I mean, I guess I would have perhaps gone for attacking the water instead, maybe?
Yeah, or at least waiting until Cubit got the upgrade.
Yeah, I mean, that was a 4k power surge to use right there. Well, 7k actually. The next one's gonna be 7k if Blues buys it. So that's not cheap to do that for 90 seconds of 100. I mean, that is 10k-ish over a very long period of time, but I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not sure how you can buy a magnetic storm.
Well, at least the price stayed high enough for Blues to now move into his own electrolysis reactors. And magnetic storm comes in. Now this would be quite good for Cubit to pick up, but
the Blues is shipping quite a lot.
Yeah, because Blues does have shipping of carbon, silicon, aluminium, iron, and uranium. He has everything shipping, as if he wasn't a scientific right now.
8 freighters in the air at the moment. That's going to I think that's about the max. So Blue's definitely going to be interested in teleportation this game if the game goes long, because that fuel price pretty high, and Blues.
Oh yeah, that's gotta hurt for Blues right now. He's still consuming fuel, and he has 2 electrolysis reactors up. He's turned off the metal mine at the bottom there. He doesn't need the uranium and iron anymore.
Now, although it is making a nice $77 per second, which isn't too shabby for a single tile.
Yeah, but it's 91 a loss in fuel, so that's just purely a negative for him right now. Especially if with Cubit also in the fuel market, you need to prioritize as much on the fuel income as possible right now. Cubit going into a patent lab. Patent's very, very popular in the current meta right now, and what do you reckon he really wants? What does he want most here?
Well, for Cubit, there's nothing obvious that says you should go into something. I mean, water's low, so liquid batteries isn't necessarily the best option. Cold fusion is an interesting first choice.
He did that before the solar flare, but this solar flare is actually going to play really nicely into Cubit's hands for the cold fusion, because that's 12 water a second right now.
Yeah, Cubit won't have to worry about power for a decently long time. Once the cold fusion
well, he is at 80k
through.
debt, so that's kind of useful here.
Did pick up a network virus going to a patent lab of his own. Does Blues have Cubit's patent lab spied out? Yes, he does. That network virus is probably there just in case Cubit goes for something that Blues wants. I don't see Blues wanting cold fusion anytime soon.
And Cubit's now done the same thing as Blues, except Cubit did not spy it. So
yeah, Cubit just got a lucky guess there. Blues going for perpetual motion. That's decent first pickup as well.
Here's the thing: if that patent lab was on the other nuclear plant instead, then he'd have a triangle of nuclear plants here, rather than having to scrap. And he wouldn't have had to scrap out 2 nuclear plants. I'm surprised that he's going perpetual motion first. I would have thought maybe nanotech with the steel price.
Well, if Blues plays it right, he can get perpetual motion first and then still beat Cubit to nanotech, thanks to the scientific patent researching battle.
That's very true. I did forget about that. That would be effective, but he's not. He's just queuing up teleportation. He does not like that fuel price, which is fair, but it would have been really nice to steal something off of him, you know?
Yeah, I think going for nanotech first, then teleportation would have been the correct move, although in this case, nanotech, Blues would have had to use the network virus and then hope that Cubit didn't immediately re-goon it in terms of those timers. They're not quite lining up in his favor.
So it takes Blues 40 seconds for the nanotech. I think Cubit was at like 38 when the patent finished. So maybe that would have actually been viable. Energy Vault, well, I mean, it's a fairly worthless patent for both players. I mean, Cubit already has Cold Fusion.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing about it is you have free 100 power for Cubit, 16k. Now, Cubit's problem is Cubit isn't losing anything to power right now, which is high, but Cubit's also not paying down that debt at all. And C debt, HQ4.
Sure, I mean, that's because his nuclear plants were frozen out, of course.
Exactly. But C debt HQ4 is never the most pleasant area to be.
Alright, teleportation now finishing up for Blues. There we go. Now he's going to get a lot of fuel income just as it dies, but he's going to have access now to be able to place some really good chem labs on potentially some carbon tiles here.
Blues will beat Cubit to thinking machines, and Cubit deciding not to challenge that and instead going into HQ4, looking at the colony here. The colony added a couple of office modules, but otherwise mostly staying in those machine shops.
Yes, it's still very
much. That was a risky upgrade for Cubit, as Blues is getting close to thinking about buying Cubit out.
Yeah,
but
I think though the Cubit does recognize that Blues just takes the upgrade. The thing is, Blues would have had to. Blues' electrolysis reactors were not going to be making him very much money. He'd moved into 2 nuclear plants, which were just going to be paying off debt. I think he knew he could get away with it. Blues was not going to have a ton of income very briefly, and Blues also realizes that and just upgrades.
Right.
Surplus on the chems, though. That's a very beautiful, lucrative market that Blues was about to move into, and now he can't do it quite so well anymore.
No, it is a little bit unfortunate for Blues there. We do have let's see, what was that? The optimization center getting blown up, and then the power surge on Blues Steel. Steel's quite profitable, and that's all because Blues has been driving the price up with the upgrades.
This is why you need the nanotech at this point to take back those nuclear plants. That's a lot of money in those. 7k each.
But deciding on food, though. That he wants to go back into steel, moving to 5 steel mills worth of steel production. Only single tile that's better than that would be chems. That's a true price. Water is a little bit of an elevated price, as Cubit's holding on to a rather large stockpile still.
Well, food at this point I think would be the most profitable thing for him to go into, but he really wants to hurt Blues' margins, which makes complete and total sense. But on the other hand, Blues has to actually pay steel to rotate, and he really wants to rotate these nuclear plants right now. So maybe not auto selling the steel, instead hold it until Blues' steel mills, all of Blues' steel mills come back online would be the correct choice here.
Yeah, I mean, that's not that big of a mistake. I'd just put that on a minor sort of thing.
Oh yeah, it's just with such high level players, the minor mistakes are the mistakes that happen. Both players holding onto their water actually. Electronic shortage. Well, that helps Cubit. Blues went into chems instead.
Right. Let's see, Blues did win that EMP, and it goes straight onto Cubit's farms, which are just there trying to erase Blues' profit margins here. Blues with just under a 10k cash lead over Cubit. It's changing as the players buy black market items.
Well, I mean, this is the nomadic disadvantage and the disadvantage of having debt at the same time. Cubit is a full $6 cheaper than Blues, so Blues now is in the cash lead, and he is way closer to the buy than Cubit would be.
Blues going into a hacker array and optimization center to try and finish out the game here. Cubit only with that one optimization center, has one optimization in electronics, researching, and one finished in food. Blues has one finished in food and one going into chems, so they're roughly about equal in optimizations, but Blues does have that hacker array to help propel.
Meanwhile, Cubit has transitioned to this point almost purely into a food-based economy, which makes sense because he could still lower the price of water to $1. These are incredibly profitable food tiles. They just don't look it.
Right. The water prices. Cubit's keeping that water price just so. Well, actually, Cubit should probably sell down that water because Blues does have a positive water income. With
very positive water income with that
condensers.
Optimization routine successful.
So that's another little mistake that Cubit has. Cubit's also auto-paying debt, which I'm not a huge fan of.
Cubit really loves to auto-pay debt. He loves to get to that 60, 61s when the bond rating is at 64 and then just start autoing, and then that way he never has to worry about it because he has seen plenty of games, especially from someone like me who kind of dies on debt because they ride the edge for too long and then forget about it and then get hit with an unlucky interest tick. But it really hurts on your income margins when you're in a situation that you kind of just need the cash right now.
Right, I mean, I'd rather see Cubit sell out of that water, or at least wait until Blues, the water freeze is done, sell out of water, pay down a bunch of debt that way, than just have that continuous drain on cash and resources, but that's my personal preference.
I feel like Cubit should potentially use one of these returner claims at this point. I do like that he has a source of carbon, but he's having a really hard time keeping these electronics factories working properly. I mean, they are very profitable, don't get me wrong, but they would be a lot more profitable with the carbon here. Each low carbon tile making $103 right now, one of the best tiles on the map.
Yes, Blues hack of chems, I think that's it. Nope, that's the natural shortage. My apologies. Blues is hacking fuel.
But he bought heavily into this chem shortage. Cubit's going to try and cut a little bit off the top as well, but at the same time, you know, he's using chems for these optimization centers. He's just in a really awkward spot with some of this income things because he placed these he's got these glass kilns working in the bottom right hand corner, and they say they're making a loss. They aren't making a loss right now. The food definitely will be making a loss at this point. Probably should get out of those.
Yeah, food market Cubit should get out of.
If those were just, you know, uranium metal mines, they would be making a lot more money.
Yes, like, they would.
Blues is making 136, and that's got no adjacency bonuses.
Yeah, Cubit could also undercut that market for Blues. Has a 328 uranium stockpile sitting here for absolutely no reason.
Meanwhile, Cubit's got 600 uranium stockpile, but he does not. No one took transparent aluminium this game, which is kind of surprising, considering that you're holding on to so much aluminium. But Blues managing to get the better of that shortage. That was that a natural shortage? I think that was a natural shortage.
The fuel, no. Fuel and chems, I was corrected, are both Blues hacks. Blues now hacking food.
Okay. Yeah, Cubit's just not making nearly as much money here. All of these oh, well, okay. And Cubit says good game.
Yeah, Cubit realizing after that hack came through that there's really no way to catch up to a scientist with 150k, 160k cash lead and in the AA versus C bond rating.
Oh yeah, the carbon market was just too important and too valuable for Cubit to just devote one single tile to, especially as a nomadic. He did not need all of these uranium iron tiles that he decides to ignore. He could very much have gone into another one, and that's kind of what killed him, because the electronics was very valuable, very profitable, and so was the chems, and just he couldn't get into those markets very effectively because he just didn't have the carbon income.
Right, didn't have the carbon income to get into the markets that were important. Only had 2 more return claims, so it would have been possible to get into those markets. And then, as we mentioned earlier, just sitting on a bunch of resources that he could have sold out to get cash now and deny income to Blues throughout the game. Let's take a quick look at the charts and graphs to see what the balance sheet says. Now, some of that's a little bit misleading since the auto sold.
A lot of it is. Neither player got to sell out.
Yeah, neither player got to sell out, and it has not been updated to include the stockpile just yet, unfortunately. Which is something I'd like to see.
I mean, Cubit just was sitting on that water stockpile for so long. That was a lot of money that he could have taken at any time to potentially get up, say, an offal market. Offals weren't that expensive, but then again, this is weirdly enough a strange series game because offals were actually bad.
I mean, they usually are bad.
But this tournament, they've always been good, except for this one game now.
Cubit saying should have denied teleportation and categories.
Teleportation allowed Blues to get into the carbon market proper. Because pirates were always going to be a worry for Blues to be able to do that. He would have had to have shipped them in from his base. He would have had to ship in the carbon manually, and that would have got him some money. But...
yeah, Blues only had to purchase... only, I say, had to purchase 150k in fuel, and...
yeah. That fuel price was killing him for a long time.
Hello, everyone. Game 2 in the best of 3 series between Blues and Cubit in the quarterfinals. If you missed game number 1, it was on series Blues choice. Cubit now choosing Mars for game number 2. Blues winning in a strong fashion in the Scientist versus Nomad battle. Once again, I'm Philopenic, joined by Gameslayer, and we have expansive robots, scientists, and elites. Zoltar should be blamed for this map, and what else can you tell us about it, Gameslayer?
This is just a very typical Mars map, and by that I mean it's almost completely unusable. There's a scientist spot in the center with 2 low iron tiles, and that might be one of the best spots on the map here. You can definitely make a robot work in the top right-hand corner. At least there's an iron high and an iron medium, but you're going to have to ship the aluminium far away. And keeping in mind, there is only 1 high and 1 medium aluminium tile. If you found as that scientific close enough, you will be able to really hurt someone that could do that. So it's basically just down to the scientist and the robot here. I don't see an elite or an expansive being able to work.
And that,
never mind.
Scientist took a really long time to get taken.
Yeah, I mean, he got that for nothing, and I consider that the best found. I definitely think, though, that Cubit should have been a robotic in this found, but at the same time, robots have a pretty poor matchup against scientists in general, because scientists really hurt robot steel profits, because robots require steel profits, so that makes sense, but you're operating off of a single medium metal mine, Cubit. You're gonna have to pay the money for a mutiny on the aluminium at some point.
Yeah, so it's definitely a trade-off in the early game, Cubit going for the expansive, but in the later stage of the game, especially if Cubit isn't able to pick up teleportation or doesn't choose teleportation, having those extra claims, having the less fuel cost as an expansive may help. The question is, can Cubit get to that point?
Yes, a teleportation would be very, very good for a Cubit, considering that he's nowhere near any of the silicon either. Honestly, I might have been tempted as Cubit to go into the two lows, the low adjacent aluminium mines, just slightly to the south of Blues' base, rather than go for that medium, because this is going to hurt for a while. This aluminium.
Yeah, it will. Cubit still waiting on that aluminum to come in to get the upgrade. Finally now has enough cash to get to HQ2. Only a 5k behind, but then that nuke comes out, turning that medium into a trace.
Cubit has the transition there. Blues did that a little too early. Blues needed to hold on to that until Cubit had actually used up all of his claims at this HQ level, and then that would have been far more devastating. As it is, Cubit can just keep this trace operating until he can afford a return a claim or a bribe a claim, and he'll be fine.
Right, Cubit going into those double metal mines there. Hasn't used the black market yet, but it is online. Also moving into some more metal and going for all the steel. Just wants to upgrade as fast as possible to get. Interestingly
enough, his aluminium was nuked to trace, and then he got rid of the building, and now he's placing the building back. Smart moves.
I wouldn't say it's quite GG just yet, but it is going to be a steep climb for Cubit. Unfortunately, there are no pirates, no magnetic storms, so Cubit can't punish Blue's greenhouse farms, which are away from his base.
I mean, an EMP would still be crippling to Blues.
Correct.
Blues still, although Blues has the glass, he actually bought the glass. I did not notice that. Yeah, and Blues has also taken the medium carbon from Cubit, which was Cubit's one saving grace, is that he had the medium carbon, so he could potentially have got into maybe some wind turbines and a carbon quarry at HQ3. But this is going to be a lot harder when Blues owns the carbon.
Right, and it all goes back to that scientist found getting taken for, what was that, plus $800 cash or something like that, when it probably should have gone for in the 20s, the 30s.
30k debt. I would have paid 30k debt for that found. The robot spot is definitely doable, but you do lose the late game as the robot if you're not if you don't have a great choice. Oh my, is that what you're doing, Blues? Really? Blues is putting wind turbines next to Cubit's base and just further blocking his territory around.
I mean, if he can win it quick, then getting this cute's okay.
Yes, it is cute because he does have usable wind tiles next to his base, which would be a lot easier to rotate out and stuff like that. Whereas these are practically unusable for anything other than power. Blues is purely wanting to establish his dominance here. This is not a good play, guys.
No, it's Blues is trying to get Cubit to surrender after, or concede, that is, after.
The psychological advantage is very important in games like this, and Blues definitely has it.
Yeah, Cubit still needs only needs another 1k for the upgrade, so that upgrade is going to come relatively
He could take it right
soon.
now, but he's deciding to place a solar panel there first. I'm not sure I agree with that because it's entering nighttime, but he does have it now.
Yeah, Cubit does get the upgrade and is only 5k cash behind Blues.
That's a big mistake, Cubit. You've got a much closer water that you just haven't noticed. Cubit's definitely tilted here. It's just slightly to the left of his base is a high water, but instead he's going for the far water.
And then that would actually be a decent triangle in the late game.
You can't really do triangles like this too far away from your base. Cubit's definitely going to have to go in teleportation to make up for this. As steel hits $12.
And Blues upgrading HQ4 for next to nothing.
And going into some electrolysis reactors. Oh, okay, there is a surplus on food. There is a god, Cubit, you are saved. But Blues will probably start making money off of power soon, if Cubit doesn't do anything about that market yet. Which it looks like he's not going to. There are no geothermals on the map, which is another reason why not to pick Expansive. Expansives love their geothermals, and there just aren't any on this map.
Yeah, Cubit Blues putting down some remote chemical refineries. Blues is going to start to be shipping a lot of stuff through the air. A decent amount, I should say. Not as much as Cubit yet. Cubit consuming 0.8 fuel per second. Blues will be consuming what?
0.8.
Something like that too, yes.
Yeah.
Moving into a third wind turbine.
Overloaded circuits create problems.
Of course, he is also consuming 1 a second from these chem refineries that he moved into.
Congratulations.
Circuit overload goes to Blues for 20k. Blues is not going to make power money after all. Going into the wind turbine though, but you know, you can't really circuit overload Cubit because that'll just go onto your own wind turbines.
Yeah, chat's been pointing that out. That by Blues moving this wind all over here, this means that Cubit just has a great spot to put any sort of expensive good money makers here.
Actually, I think this would be worth it for Blues to actually circuit overload the steel mills and hope for a good bounce so that the circuit overloads don't last very long in the wind turbines, because that power is creeping up there. Okay, so that's how you EMP it. Okay.
Mutiny is going back and forth between our players. Cubit
can't afford that.
No. Cubit finally has some positive power money. Somehow.
Very briefly, whilst that solar flare lasted.
Yeah, before night
chems the 120 chems are flying through the air, and they are about to land in Blues' lap, and that is going to be plus 16k. And Cubit just gives up.
Yeah, Cubit conceding. The longer that game went, the harder and less likely it seemed that Cubit would be able to catch up. 1 HQ down from Blues, needed another 11k. The upgrade already in $106,000 in debt, thanks to all the shipping that Cubit was doing. Some of that forced and some of that misplays, like going for that water pump, as you mentioned. So Blues does take this best of 3, 2 games to 0.
Very, very convincingly for Blues. Although, I say convincingly, but it's on both players' heads that no one took that scientific found until it was plus 800.
Yeah, this, as we mentioned earlier, any newer players watching this stream or on YouTube later, if there's only a 1 found map, or 1.5 found as this one may be more accurately described, don't let the first found go to 800. Take it somewhere north of 20k debt.
But again, a robot in Cubit's spot would have been perfectly fine to survive. Probably would have lost in the late game unless he played very well, but that would have. But this was certainly a potential to second found map. It's just the second found was not nearly as valuable. Definitely wasn't an expansive spot though. With returner claims and briber claims, you can definitely make something work as a robot.
Yeah, Blues agreeing that his second spot was the robot where Cubit founded, and strictly worse founding location. I tend to agree.
Well, I mean, a robot who gets a carbon, gets wind turbines up, they can still do something.
Right.
Especially because Blues would have been stuck on basically just 2 steel mills the entire game. A robot might have been able to just start going through their upgrades just a little bit quicker. Especially because they won't also... That's another thing as well. The expansive colony does use up life support, which feeds more money into Blues' pocket, being an scientific. The 4 claim advantage the expansive would have got was just definitely not worth this. Well, I've beaten that to death.
Yeah, that was the series. Blues will advance and play the winner of... Let's double check and see. No, Blues advances to play DeathTacticus, so that's always a fun matchup to go into. So the semifinals, round 2 has been decided, DeathTacticus versus Blues. And then in the quarterfinals, we are still waiting for Rahi to face PB Head, and the winner of that game will face Cat in the semifinals. That looks to be the end of this cast. We don't have any more games scheduled for today, so thank you for tuning in, everyone. For Game Slayer, I'm Phil Fennec, signing out.